Hello, and welcome back to Best English Podcast. I'm your host, Sophia. Today, we continue our conversation on a subject that holds the key to unlocking your true potential in English. It's a journey that goes beyond textbooks and classrooms. A journey that takes place right between your ears. We are going to dive deep into the process of training your brain to think differently in English. We've introduced this idea before, the concept of moving away from being a mental translator and becoming a direct thinker in English. You might recognize the feeling, that constant, slow, and often exhausting process. You have a thought in your native language. You search for the words. You mentally assemble the sentence, piece by painstaking piece, worrying about grammar and word order. And only then, after all that effort, do you speak. It feels like trying to run a race while wading through thick mud. It's heavy, it's inefficient, and it holds you back from expressing the real you. But there is a brighter path. A path where your thoughts can flow directly into English words, like a clear, fast-moving river. This is the path of thinking in English. It's about creating new, super-fast highways in your brain, connecting your ideas directly to English expression. It's the difference between looking at a map of a city and actually walking its streets, feeling its rhythm, and breathing its air. It's the key to turning your knowledge of English into a living, breathing skill. This transformation, this rewiring of your brain, doesn't happen by magic. It's a conscious process. It requires patience, a smart strategy, and consistent practice. It's about building new mental habits day by day until they become second nature. Today, we are going to walk that path together. We will rejoin our friend, Alex, and follow his story in great detail. We'll see his struggles up close, celebrate his breakthroughs, and learn from his journey as he completely changes his relationship with the English language. Alex is intelligent, he's dedicated, and he's been studying English for years. His reading skills are pretty good. He understands grammar concepts. But his speaking is where he feels trapped. His mind is a translation machine, constantly whirring in the background, making every conversation a monumental effort. We talked about his painful experience at an international conference, where he felt invisible, unable to join the conversation. But his struggles started long before that. A few months before that conference, on a seemingly ordinary Tuesday afternoon, Alex decided to treat himself to a coffee at a new cafe in a touristy part of his city. He saw it as a low-stakes opportunity to practice his English. He walked in, and the friendly barista, a native English speaker from Australia, smiled and asked, "Hey, mate, what can I get for you?" Alex freezes for a split second. "Hey, mate." His brain stumbles. He knew hey and he knew mate. But the casual, friendly combination threw him off. He starts the translation process. In his head, he thought in Spanish, "Quiero un café con leche grande." Now, the translation. "I want a coffee with milk large." It sounded a bit robotic, a bit demanding. He remembered his teacher saying, "I would like" is more polite. He restarted in his mind. "I would like a large coffee with milk." He finally opened his mouth to speak. In that time, the barista, seeing his hesitation, tried to be helpful. "Just a latte? Cappuccino?" he suggested, pointing to the menu. Alex panicked slightly. The flow is broken. He just blurted out, "Yes, latte. Large." The barista nods. "No worries. Anything else for you today?" Again, Alex's brain went into overdrive. No worries. What does that mean? Does it mean he was worried? The Spanish equivalent doesn't really exist. He decided to ignore it. The second question? Anything else for you today? In his mind, ¿algo más? The answer. No, gracias. Eso es todo. Now translate. No, thank you. That is all. He said, no, that's all. He paid for his coffee, his face feeling a little warm with embarrassment. He sat down at a small table, and the frustration hit him like a wave. It was such a simple interaction, so simple. Yet it felt like a test he had failed. He sounded like a robot. He couldn't understand the friendly, natural phrases the barista used. He felt clumsy and slow. He thought to himself, I've been studying for 3 years. Why is it still so hard? This small scene at the coffee shop, followed by the silent frustration at the conference, became Alex's turning point. He knew he couldn't just keep memorizing vocabulary lists. The problem wasn't the number of words he knew, it was the system his brain was using to access them. He declared a quiet war on translation. He decided he would do whatever it took to learn to think, directly in English. This is where his real journey and our lesson begins. The very first and most fundamental step Alex took was to change his environment. Your brain is an adaptation machine. It gets good at what it does often. If it's constantly swimming in the sea of your native language, it will always default to that language. To encourage it to think in English, you have to flood it with English. You have to create an immersion bubble, a personal English world, right where you are. Alex started with his phone. He switched the system language to English. Imagine that first day. He woke up and his alarm said, snooze and stop. He knew what they meant, but it was the first little signal to his brain. Today is different. He went to check his messages. He was looking for the familiar icon, but also the word mensajes. Instead, he saw messages. A tiny mental adjustment. He wanted to check the weather. He had to scan his apps for weather, not clima. Later that day, he tried to change a setting for his notifications. He went into settings. Everything was in English. Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, notifications, display, and brightness. It took him a full minute to find what normally took him 10 seconds. He felt a flash of annoyance. This is so inefficient, he thought. He was tempted to switch it back, just for a moment, to find the setting quickly. But then he stopped. He recognized this feeling of frustration as a sign of learning. His brain was being forced to create new pathways. He took a deep breath and slowly read through the options until he found what he needed. By the end of the day, he had probably read 100 English words just by using his phone without opening a single textbook. He wasn't translating them anymore. He was associating them directly with their function. This is a change that has a huge cumulative effect. Every notification, every menu, every app name becomes a micro lesson, reinforcing English in your daily life. Alex didn't stop at his phone. He moved on to his laptop. He changed the operating system language. Then he went to his favorite social media sites. He changed the language of the interface to English. This had an interesting side effect. The platform's algorithms started showing him more content in English. His feed began to fill with posts from English-speaking pages, news from British and American sources, and videos from English-speaking creators. He was curating his digital world to be an English-speaking one. Then came entertainment. Alex loved watching movies and series. His habit was English audio with subtitles in his native Spanish. This, he realized, was a major translation crutch. His brain could relax and just read the Spanish, only half listening to the English. So, he made the switch. English audio with English subtitles. The first movie he watched this way was a challenge. It was a fast-paced action movie. The characters spoke quickly, using slang he didn't know. He found himself pausing the movie every few minutes. He would read the English subtitle, hear the spoken words, and try to connect them. Sometimes he'd see a word in the subtitles that he knew from reading, but he had never recognized it when spoken. For example, he saw the word subtle. Ars? He knew this word, but the character said it, and he had missed it because the B is silent. Oh, he thought. So that's how you say it. He was connecting sound to text, a vital skill for listening comprehension. It took him 3 hours to watch a 2-hour movie, but he felt like he had learned more than in a week of classes. After a few weeks of this, he took the plunge. He turned off the subtitles completely. He chose a sitcom he had seen before, so he already knew the basic plot. This was a smart strategy. It lowered the pressure of understanding every single word. The first 10 minutes were a blur of sound. He felt a familiar sense of panic. I'm missing everything. But he forced himself to relax. He focused on the characters' expressions, their tone of voice, the laugh track from the audience. He started to get the gist of the situations. He might not have understood the specific punchline of a joke, but he understood that a joke had been told. He kept at it. Every night he'd watch 20 minutes of a show with no subtitles. Slowly, like a picture coming into focus, things became clearer. His brain, hungry for meaning and deprived of the easy option of text, started working harder. It began to pick up the rhythm, the intonation, the melody of spoken English. He was no longer trying to catch individual words. He was starting to understand the flow of the language. This staged approach is something you can easily adopt. Move from subtitles in your language to subtitles in English. Then move to no subtitles, starting with short, easy, or familiar content. You are weaning your brain off the habit of translation and training it to understand directly from sound. Once Alex had started to build his immersion bubble, he knew he had to change what was happening inside his head. The input was changing, but now the output, his own thoughts, needed to change too. This led him to his next technique, starting with the smallest possible units of thought, single words. He called it internal labeling. As he moved through his apartment, he began to consciously name every object he saw in English. He woke up, alarm clock, lamp, pillow, blanket. He walked to the window, curtain, glass, sky, cloud. He went to the kitchen. This became a rich field for practice. Refrigerator, faucet, sink, countertop, cabinet, stove, oven, microwave. Imagine him on his first grocery shopping trip doing this. He walked into the supermarket, a place he'd been 100 times, but now he saw it with new eyes. He looked at the vegetables, lettuce, tomatoes, cucumbers. Then he saw zucchini. He didn't know the word. The old Alex would have just thought calabacine and moved on. The new Alex stopped. He discreetly took out his phone. He had installed a monolingual dictionary, an English to English one. This was a crucial choice. He typed in the Spanish word to find the English equivalent, zucchini. Then he immediately looked up zucchini in his English dictionary. It said, a long green summer squash. He read the sentence, a long green summer squash. He said the word zucchini quietly to himself a few times. He had just learned a new word and its meaning, entirely within the English zone. He had strengthened the immersion bubble. He continued through the store. He walked down the aisle. He looked at the cereal boxes, the cans of soup, the jars of jam. When he got to the checkout, he thought, cashier, conveyor belt, credit card machine, receipt. The entire trip, which was normally a mindless chore, had become an intensive, real-world vocabulary lesson. He wasn't just memorizing a list, he was connecting English words to real, tangible objects in his environment. This is an incredibly simple but powerful exercise. Right now, look around you and label 5 things in English. Desk, what? Chair, computer, mug, lamp. You are building the very first level of English thinking, creating direct links that bypass translation. After a couple of weeks, Alex's inner world was peppered with these English labels. He felt ready for the next step, connecting the words into simple phrases and sentences. He began to narrate his own life, like a silent commentator. His morning routine became his training ground. As he woke up, his inner monologue shifted. I am waking up. I am turning off my alarm. I am getting out of bed. My feet are on the floor. The floor is cold. He was narrating in the present continuous tense, describing his actions as they happened. Let's follow him into the kitchen as he makes breakfast and listen to his internal monologue. I am opening the fridge. I am taking out the milk and the eggs. Now I am closing the fridge. I need a bowl. Here is a bowl. I am cracking 2 eggs into the bowl. Now I need a fork. I am whisking the eggs with a fork. I am adding a little milk. I am turning on the stove. I am putting a pan on the stove. The pan is getting hot. I am pouring the eggs into the pan. I can hear them sizzle. This might seem silly, but analyze what he was doing. He was practicing subjects, verbs, objects, and prepositions. He was using vocabulary in a natural context. And when he thought, I can hear them sizzle, he was connecting a sensory experience, the sound, with the English word for it. This creates incredibly strong memory links. He wasn't just learning grammar rules, he was living them. You can do this with any routine activity. Brushing your teeth, taking a shower, getting dressed, making your bed. These are moments in your day that are often on autopilot. You can reclaim that mental space for English practice. Tomorrow morning, when you are preparing your breakfast or coffee, try to narrate the steps in your mind. I am getting a cup. I am putting coffee in the cup. I am pouring hot water. Simple, effective, powerful. As Alex grew more confident, he realized that our thoughts are not always in the present. We constantly think about the past and the future. He needed to practice this too. He developed a new habit called structured thinking time. He dedicated 2 5-minute slots every day to this. In the morning, during his coffee, he would practice thinking about the future. He would take his notebook and ask himself, what am I going to do today? His internal answer, sometimes written, sometimes just thought, would be entirely in English. My workday starts at 9. I have an important meeting at 10 o'clock with my team. I need to prepare for it. I will review the sales figures. After the meeting, I am going to write my weekly report. For lunch, I will probably eat the chicken I cooked yesterday. This afternoon, I have to call a supplier. I hope I can reach them. After work, I think I will go for a run if it's not raining. In these 5 minutes, he was practicing future forms, modal verbs, and vocabulary related to his daily schedule. He was training his brain to plan and organize in English. Then, in the evening, just before bed, he would do the opposite. He would spend 5 minutes reflecting on the past. What did I do today? He'd ask himself. The meeting this morning was productive. I think my boss liked my ideas. I wrote the report, and it took longer than I expected. It was quite difficult. I didn't call the supplier because I didn't have time. I will have to do it tomorrow. I went for a run after work, and it felt great. I listened to an English podcast while I was running. I understood most of it, which was a nice surprise. For dinner, I just made a simple salad. Now I am tired, and I'm ready to sleep. Here, he was practicing the simple past tense, connecting verbs, and even expressing feelings and evaluations. Productive, difficult, felt great, nice surprise. This 10-minute daily habit had a massive impact. It trained his brain to operate in different time frames, moving him from a simple narrator to a reflective thinker. You can start this tonight. Before you sleep, try to recall 3 things you did today in English. Today, I worked. I cooked dinner. I watched a movie. That's a perfect start. Thinking isn't just about logistics and narration. It's about ideas, opinions, and creativity. Alex knew this was the next mountain to climb. He needed to practice expressing his own unique thoughts in English. He started using a technique he called the internal debate club. He would pick a simple topic, often during his commute or while doing chores, and have a debate with himself in his head. For example, is it better to live in a big city or the countryside? First, he would argue for the city. Living in a city is better because there are more opportunities. It's easier to find a good job. Also, there's more to do. You have museums, theaters, concerts, and amazing restaurants. You can meet people from all over the world. Public transportation is usually very good, so you might not even need a car. Then, he would switch sides and argue for the countryside. On the other hand, the countryside is much more peaceful and quiet. The air is cleaner. Life is less stressful. It's a safer place to raise children. You are closer to nature, which is good for your mental health. The cost of living is often lower, so you can have a bigger house. Through this simple mental exercise, he was practicing comparative language, giving reasons, using transition words, and exploring a topic from multiple perspectives. He was doing all of this in the safe, private theater of his mind, with no pressure and no fear of judgment. You can try this with any topic that interests you. Are social media good for society? Should all students learn a second language? What's the best movie of all time and why? Spend 5 minutes exploring the topic in your head. You'll be amazed at how it pushes your language skills and helps you organize your thoughts in English. At this point in his journey, Alex hit a wall that almost every language learner hits. It's called the plateau. For weeks, he had been feeling a sense of rapid progress, but now he felt stuck. He was doing his exercises, the narrating, the structured thinking, but he didn't feel like he was getting any better. His conversations still had awkward pauses. He still struggled to find the right words sometimes. The frustration began to creep back in. Maybe this is as good as I can get, he thought. Maybe I just don't have the talent for this. This is a dangerous moment for any learner. But Alex, instead of giving up, decided to analyze the problem. He realized his practice had become too routine. He was narrating the same morning routine, thinking about the same kind of work days. He needed to introduce new challenges and new types of input. He decided to shake things up. First, he started reading. He had been focusing so much on listening and thinking that he had neglected reading for pleasure. He went to a bookstore and found the section for graded readers. He bought a book at his level, a simple detective story. Every night, instead of watching TV, he would read a chapter. This was a revelation. Reading exposed him to more complex sentence structures and a richer vocabulary than he would normally encounter in daily conversation. He saw how prepositions were used correctly, how clauses were connected. These correct, well-formed sentences were being absorbed by his brain, providing new models for his own thinking. After finishing the graded reader, he challenged himself to read an article online every day about a topic he knew nothing about, like astronomy or marine biology. This forced him to learn new, specific vocabulary, pushing him out of his comfort zone. Reading became a new, powerful tool for feeding his English brain. He also introduced a new person into his journey. He found a language exchange partner online, a native English speaker named Sarah from Canada, who wanted to learn Spanish. They agreed to talk on Skype for an hour every week. 30 minutes in Spanish, 30 minutes in English. Their first conversation was terrifying for Alex. All his practice had been internal. Now, he had to produce language in real time with a real person. He was slow. He made mistakes. But Sarah was patient and friendly. In their second week, he tried to tell her about his weekend. He said, "I did a party with my friends." Sarah gently said, "Oh, you mean you had a party? Or you threw a party?" In English, we usually say have a party or throw a party. It wasn't a criticism, it was a helpful correction. Alex had a light bulb moment. He was learning about collocations, words that naturally go together. He started a new section in his notebook called Chunks and Collocations. He wrote down, have a party, throw a party, not do a party. He started listening for these chunks everywhere. He heard people say, make a decision, take a risk, spend time, waste money. He realized fluent speakers didn't think word by word. They thought in these pre-packaged phrases. He started practicing them in his internal monologues. I need to make a decision about my vacation. This made his thoughts sound and feel much more natural. His conversations with Sarah also exposed him to cultural nuances. One day, he was telling her about a difficult project at work. He said, "I have to do this difficult thing, but I will do it." Sarah replied, so you just have to bite the bullet." Alex was completely confused. Bite? A bullet? A metal bullet from a gun? Sarah laughed and explained the idiom. It means to face a difficult situation with courage, to just do something you have to do even though it's unpleasant. This was another major breakthrough. Language wasn't just words and grammar. It was filled with culture, history, and imagery. Learning these idioms and expressions was like discovering secret passages into the heart of the language. This new friendship with Sarah provided something else, something incredibly powerful, the realization that he was not alone in his struggles. The language exchange was not a one-way street. One week, during their Spanish practice time, Alex noticed that Sarah seemed a little frustrated. He asked her in Spanish what was wrong. She sighed and switched to English to explain more easily. "It's my Spanish," she said, sounding defeated. "I feel like I'm not making any progress. I had this really embarrassing moment last week. I went to this little family-run bakery where they don't speak any English. I love it there, and I wanted to buy 2 loaves of bread for my parents. So I tried to say, 2 panes para mis padres." Alex nodded. "That's correct." "I know," Sarah exclaimed, "but I must have said padres wrong. Maybe my pronunciation was bad, because the woman behind the counter looked at me, very confused, and then she handed me 2 potatoes." Alex blinked. "Potatoes?" "Yes, potatoes. Papas. I must have said papas instead of padres." "I was so embarrassed, Alex. I just paid for the potatoes and left. I didn't even get the bread. I walked home with 2 potatoes, feeling like a complete idiot. It's like my brain knows the word, but my mouth does something different." Listening to her story, Alex felt a huge sense of empathy and relief. Sarah, a confident, articulate native English speaker, had the exact same moments of failure and embarrassment in Spanish that he had in English. His memory flashed back to the coffee shop, to him struggling to order a latte. He wasn't the only one who felt clumsy. The struggle was universal. It was part of the process for everyone. He smiled at Sarah. "Let me tell you about the time I ordered coffee," he said, and he shared his own story. They both ended up laughing, united in their shared experiences of small, humbling failures. Sarah then told him how she was trying to think in Spanish to get better. "I do that narrating thing you told me about," she said. "The other day, I was baking a cake, and I was narrating the whole thing to myself in Spanish. Ahora, yo mezclo la harina y el azúcar. Necesito 3 huevos." It felt so weird, talking to myself in the kitchen. But it actually helped. It forced me to use the right verbs and the right gender for nouns over and over. Ew. This conversation was a turning point for Alex. It transformed his view of language learning from a lonely struggle into a shared human experience. It made him a more empathetic language partner to Sarah, and it gave him renewed motivation to continue his own journey. He realized that every learner, no matter their native language, is climbing their own version of the same mountain. This combination of reading, speaking with a partner, and focusing on chunks and idioms helped Alex break through his plateau. He was challenging his brain in new ways, and it was responding. His thinking became more flexible, more nuanced, and more natural. And all this practice was about to be put to the ultimate test. One Thursday morning, Alex's boss, Maria, called him into her office. A knot of nervousness immediately formed in his stomach. Maria gestured for him to sit down. "Alex," she began, "I have a big opportunity for you. Our clients from the US, the ones for the big quarterly project, want a specific update on the data analysis you've been leading. They want to hear it directly from you. The meeting is tomorrow afternoon." Alex's heart started pounding. A presentation to an important American client tomorrow? 1,000 fears screamed in his mind. "I can't. My English isn't good enough. What if they ask a question? What if I freeze?" The translator part of his brain, which had been quiet for a while, suddenly woke up and started shouting warnings. But then, another voice spoke, a quieter, calmer voice he had been cultivating for months, the voice of the English thinker. It said, Wait. You have been preparing for this. This is not the conference. This is not the coffee shop. You have tools now. He looked at his boss, took a deep breath, and said, "Okay, Maria, I can do that. I will need some time to prepare today." The moment he left her office, the panic tried to return, but he fought it with a plan. He was going to use every technique he had learned. First, structured thinking. He took out his notebook and started outlining the presentation directly in English. He didn't write a single word in Spanish. 1. Introduction. Welcome them. State the purpose. 2. Problem recap. Briefly remind them of the initial challenge. 3. My process. Explain the data collection and analysis method. 4th key findings. Present the 3 most important results. 5. Next steps. Outline the plan for the next 2 weeks. 6th Q&A. Prachar. Next, he focused on thinking in chunks. He knew he needed professional, formal phrases. He wrote down a list of useful chunks he could practice. For the beginning, "Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining." The main purpose of today's presentation is to give you an update on 4 transitions. Now, let's move on to the next point. This brings me to my key findings. If you look at the graph on this slide, for the end. To summarize the main points, in conclusion, I'd like to say, thank you for your time. I would now be happy to answer any questions you may have. He spent the next hour using the talking to yourself out loud technique. He stood in an empty meeting room and gave the presentation to the empty chairs. He said the chunks over and over until they felt natural. He recorded himself on his phone and listened back, checking his pronunciation and intonation. He sounded a bit nervous, but the words were clear. That evening, he had a quick emergency call with his language partner, Sarah. "Sarah, I'm so nervous. I have a big presentation tomorrow." He explained the situation. Sarah was incredibly supportive. "Alex, this is amazing. This is what you've been working for." They spent 20 minutes practicing the most difficult part for Alex, the question and answer section. Sarah pretended to be the client and asked him tough questions. "Can you explain that in a simpler way? What are the risks of this approach?" This practice was invaluable. It helped him prepare for the unexpected. Finally, right before he went to sleep, he used visualization. He lay in bed, closed his eyes, and imagined the presentation. He didn't imagine a perfect performance. Instead, he imagined himself feeling nervous, but still being able to take a breath and speak clearly. He imagined a client asking a difficult question, and he imagined himself pausing, thinking, and giving a calm, thoughtful answer. He visualized success. The next day, sitting in the conference room, with his boss beside him and the clients' faces on the large screen, Alex felt his heart pound. But it wasn't the paralyzing fear of the past. It was nervous energy. When it was his turn to speak, he took a deep breath, just as he had visualized. "Good afternoon, everyone," he began, his voice a little shaky at first. "Thank you for joining. The main purpose of today's presentation is to give you an update on the data analysis phase of the project." He moved through his slides using the chunks he had practiced. His narration of the process was clear and logical. He was explaining complex ideas, and he was doing it all in English. He was so focused on his message that he almost forgot to be scared. Then came the moment he dreaded. He finished his final slide and said, "I would now be happy to answer any questions." One of the clients, a senior manager named Mr. Harrison, spoke up. "Thank you, Alex. That was very clear. I do have one question. On slide 7, you showed a projected efficiency gain of 15%. That seems optimistic. Can you tell me exactly what factors give you the confidence to predict that specific number?" The room felt silent. This was a direct challenge to his work. The old Alex would have crumbled. His mind would have been a traffic jam of Spanish words trying to get through a tiny English translation toll booth. But the new Alex was different. He paused. He looked at Mr. Harrison on the screen. He didn't have a pre-made answer. He had to think. And the thinking happened in English. His internal monologue went something like this. "Okay, he thinks 15% is too high. He wants to know why I am confident. Factors. Factor 1 is the new software. Factor 2 is the streamlined workflow. Factor 3 is the training we provided. I need to explain these 3 things simply." And he took another breath and began to speak. "That's an excellent question, Mr. Harrison. The 15% projection is based on 3 key factors. First, the new software we implemented automates several tasks that were previously done manually. That accounts for about 5% of the gain. Second, we've redesigned the workflow, which eliminates 2 redundant steps. Our initial tests show this adds another 5 to 6%. And finally, the team has completed a new training program, which has reduced the error rate significantly, improving overall efficiency. The combination of those 3 factors makes us confident in that 15% figure." He finished speaking, his heart still beating fast. Mr. Harrison nodded slowly, looking at his own notes. "I see," he said. "That makes sense. Thank you for clarifying that. It's good work." Alex felt a wave of relief, so powerful, it was almost dizzying. He had done it. He had faced a difficult, unexpected question in a high-pressure situation, and he had answered it. He hadn't translated. He had understood the question, processed it, formulated a logical answer with supporting points, and delivered it clearly, all directly in English. His boss, Maria, gave him a small, almost imperceptible nod and a smile. In that moment, Alex knew he had crossed a new threshold. This wasn't just about passing a test. It was about being a competent, confident professional in a global environment. His English was no longer a barrier, it was a bridge. His professional victory gave him a huge boost of confidence, but Alex soon realized there was another mountain to climb. In some ways, it was even more intimidating than a business presentation. This was the mountain of casual, unstructured social interaction. A few weeks later, during their weekly video call, Sarah said, "Hey, Alex, a few of my friends and I are having a casual game night at my apartment on Saturday. Just some board games, snacks, nothing fancy. You should totally come." A mix of excitement and terror washed over Alex. One-on-one with Sarah was fine. A structured presentation was manageable. But a room full of native speakers, all friends with each other, telling jokes, talking over each other, using slang and cultural references, it sounded like the ultimate listening challenge. The fear of being the quiet, awkward outsider was immense. He almost made an excuse. "I think I have plans." But he stopped himself. He remembered his goal, not just to speak English, but to live in it. A social life was part of that. "You know what, Sarah?" he said, his voice more confident than he felt. "I'd love to. Thank you for inviting me." He spent the next 2 days in a state of low-level anxiety. What if he didn't understand anything? What if no one talked to him? What if he tried to say something and it came out wrong? He decided to prepare, not by scripting conversations, but by setting a realistic intention. His goal for the night was not to be the funniest or most talkative person in the room. His goal was simply to listen, to try and follow the flow, and to have at least one meaningful one-on-one conversation. When he arrived on Saturday night, the apartment was already full of laughter and music. Sarah greeted him warmly and introduced him to a few people. The names flew by in a blur. Mark, Emily, Tom, Chloe. Everyone was friendly, but the conversation was fast. It was like jumping into a river that was already moving at high speed. For the first hour, Alex mostly listened. He focused on just getting the gist. He watched people's body language. He listened to their tone. He realized he didn't need to understand every single word to understand if a story was funny or serious or exciting. When someone told a joke he didn't quite get, he watched the others laugh, and he smiled along, absorbing the happy energy of the room. He used a few of his simple conversational chunks to stay engaged. When someone finished a story, he would nod and say, "Wow, that's crazy," or, "Oh, really?" It was a small contribution, but it kept him from feeling completely invisible. They started playing a party game that required players to describe a word without saying the word itself. When his turn came, his heart pounded. His word was nostalgia. His mind went blank for a second. The old translation habit tried to kick in, but he pushed it away. He thought in English. Okay, how to describe this? It's a feeling. It's about the past. It's a happy and sad feeling at the same time. He took a breath and started. Okay, this is a feeling. It's when you think about the past, maybe your childhood. Someone shouted, "Memory." Alex shook his head. No, it's more specific. It's a happy feeling, but also a little sad because that time is gone. Like when you hear an old song on the radio. Emily's eyes lit up. "Nostalgia," she yelled. "Yes," Alex shouted, relieved. The team cheered. It was a small moment, but it was a victory. He had explained an abstract concept under pressure. Later in the evening, he found himself in the kitchen with Tom, one of Sarah's friends, as they were both getting drinks. Tom asked him the usual question. "So, how do you know Sarah?" Alex answered, explaining their language exchange. This led to a quieter, one-on-one conversation. Tom was a graphic designer and was interested in Alex's work in data analysis. Alex found that in this calmer setting, his English flowed much more easily. They talked about their jobs, about the challenges of creativity versus logic. Then they discovered a shared love for old science fiction movies. "You like those old movies too?" Tom asked, surprised. "I thought I was the only one." "Of course," Alex said, his enthusiasm taking over. "I think the special effects were more creative back then. They had to use models and clever camera tricks. It's not like today with all the CGI." They spent the next 20 minutes debating which movie had the best practical effects. Alex was no longer thinking about grammar or vocabulary. He was just sharing his passion. He was disagreeing, laughing, and making points. He was having a real, genuine conversation with a new person. He was connecting. He left the party close to midnight. As he walked home through the quiet streets, he felt a profound sense of accomplishment that was different from the one he felt after his presentation. The presentation was a professional success. This was a personal one. He had survived a social situation that once would have been his worst nightmare. More than that, he had actually enjoyed it. He had connected with people, shared a part of himself, and felt normal. He realized that thinking in English wasn't just a tool for work. It was the key that unlocked the door to human connection. It was the ability to share a laugh over a silly board game, to find a common interest in a crowded kitchen, to feel like a part of a community. This realization filled him with a quiet, happy warmth. The hard work wasn't just about building his career, it was about building his life. This new confidence carried over into all aspects of his life. It led him to that final, most rewarding stage of his journey, being himself in English. He felt like he had unlocked a new room in his own mind. He could now walk into it and feel comfortable, feel like himself. It was a few weeks after the game night. He was on another video call with his international colleagues. It was an informal chat before a meeting. David, from the UK office, mentioned that he had tried to bake bread over the weekend, and it had been a complete disaster. He said, "It was as hard as a rock. I could have used it as a weapon." Without translating, without even consciously planning it, a thought popped into Alex's head, fully formed in English. He smiled and said, "Well, David, don't quit your day job." The other colleagues on the call laughed. David chuckled and said, "Good advice, Alex." Alex felt a jolt of pure joy. It wasn't just that he had said a grammatically correct sentence, it was that he had made a joke, a culturally appropriate, timely, and witty remark. It was something his Spanish personality would have said. In that moment, the two versions of himself merged. He wasn't a Spanish speaker struggling with English anymore. He was just Alex, a multilingual professional, able to connect and be himself in more than one language. This was the freedom he had been seeking. This was the ultimate reward for all his hard work. And this led Alex to the final, most profound stage of his journey. It wasn't just about speaking or understanding. It was about a fundamental shift in his inner world, in his very sense of self. One afternoon, he was sitting on a park bench, just watching the world go by. He wasn't practicing or studying. He was just being. He looked up at the sky. The thought that formed in his mind was simply, "The sky is so blue today." He paused. He realized the Spanish word, azul, was nowhere in his mind. It wasn't a translation. The concept of that color, that specific sight, was now directly and permanently linked to the English word blue. It was a small thing, but it felt enormous. It was as if he had installed a second parallel operating system in his brain. He started thinking about words and how they shape our reality. He thought about his conversation with Tom at the party. They had talked about being thrilled for a movie release. In Spanish, he would have said emocionado. But thrilled felt different. It felt more energetic, more electric. Emocionado was a broad term for excited, but thrilled was a specific, high-frequency kind of excitement. He began to understand that learning a language wasn't just learning new labels for old feelings. It was discovering new feelings, or at least new shades of feelings he didn't have specific words for before. The English word content felt different from contento. It felt quieter, more peaceful. His emotional vocabulary had expanded, and with it, his ability to understand his own inner state. He then reflected on the joke he had made. "Don't quit your day job." He dissected it in his mind. Why was it funny? It wasn't just the words, it was the shared cultural understanding. It was a gentle way of teasing someone about a lack of skill in a particular area. A direct translation into Spanish would have made no sense. He realized that to truly think in English, he had to start thinking within an English cultural framework. Humor, politeness, directness. All these things were part of the language itself. He was not just learning to speak English, he was learning to see the world, for moments at a time, through an Anglophone cultural lens. This didn't mean he was losing his own culture or identity. On the contrary, he felt bigger. He felt like his mind had expanded. He could now stand in his Spanish room, with its own rich culture, feelings, and expressions. And he could also walk freely and confidently into his English room, with its own unique set of tools for seeing and describing the world. He wasn't two different people. He was one person with two windows, two perspectives from which to view reality. The wall of translation that had separated the rooms had finally dissolved. Now he could move between them effortlessly. This integration, this feeling of wholeness, was a deeper success than any presentation or party. It was the quiet, internal peace of a mind that had grown. This long, detailed journey of Alex's is a map for you. It shows that the path to thinking in English is paved with small, consistent, and deliberate actions. It's a holistic process that involves changing your environment, your internal habits, and your mindset. Let's do a final, comprehensive recap of this expanded journey. First, you must create a deep immersion bubble. Change your computer, your social media, your news sources. Be systematic in how you use entertainment. Move from subtitles in your language to English subtitles, and finally to no subtitles, choosing content strategically. Second, begin the internal work by labeling your world in English, connecting words to objects. When you get stuck, use a monolingual dictionary to stay completely inside the English zone. Third, become the narrator of your own life. Use the simple present and present continuous tenses to describe your routine actions, connecting grammar and vocabulary to real-life context. Fourth, implement structured thinking time. Dedicate specific, short periods to actively plan your future and reflect on your past in English. This builds the mental muscles for more complex thoughts. Fifth, become an internal debater. Explore topics from multiple viewpoints in your mind to practice forming opinions, giving reasons, and using more advanced language structures. Sixth, overcome the inevitable plateau by introducing new challenges. Start reading, first graded readers, then more complex articles. This will expand your vocabulary and your understanding of sentence structure. Seventh, find a safe space for real-world practice. A language exchange partner is ideal. This will expose you to natural language, provide helpful corrections, and teach you about collocations, idioms, and the universal struggles of all language learners. Eighth, learn to prepare for and embrace high-stakes situations, both professional and social. Use all your tools: outlining, practicing chunks, visualization, and setting realistic goals to build confidence. Facing these challenges is where true growth happens. And finally, be open to the profound ways this journey can change your inner world. It can expand your emotional vocabulary, deepen your cultural understanding, and ultimately, give you a new perspective on your own identity. This path is not easy, and it is not short, but it is profoundly rewarding. Every time you choose to think a thought in English instead of your native language, You are casting a vote for a more fluent, more confident you. You are literally forging new pathways in your brain. The ultimate goal is not just to speak English without translation. It's to live, feel, and be yourself in English. It's to be able to share your unique personality, your humor, and your ideas with the world, without a language barrier holding you back. Your brain is a powerful and flexible tool, more than capable of this amazing feat. You just need to be its guide, its coach, and its biggest supporter. Thank you for staying with me through this deep dive. I hope Alex's detailed story has inspired you and given you a practical, realistic roadmap to follow. Choose one new thing from his journey and try it this week. Perhaps start a chunk notebook or read your first article in English. Every step, no matter how small, is a step toward freedom. I'm Sophia, and this has been Best English Podcast. I look forward to our next session together. Keep practicing, be kind to yourself, and enjoy the incredible journey of retraining your brain. Goodbye for now.